Okay, let's get started. Badram Karanebihi Shrunyama Devaha Badram Pashyema Akshabihi Ryajatraha Sthirairangair Tushtuam Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitan Yadayuhu Swastinah Indro Vridrashrabaha Swastinah Pusha Vishwavedaha Swastinah Tarksho Arishtademihi Swastino Bruhaspatir Dadatu यो अन्तः प्रविश्य मम वाच इमां प्रशुप्तां सञ्जीवयति अखिलशक्तिधरस्वदाम्ना अन्यांश्च हस्तचरणश्रवणत्वगादीन् प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथा भूतं विष्णु तत्व विनिर्णयम्. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, we've been doing the contemplation of Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6 since the beginning of June. And we've done about 4 sessions, and in between we had revisions of various sort, culminating in an excellent revision last week, looking at the previous concepts within Chandogya Upanishads, and also Srishti Prakarana, an introduction to how creation comes about and how creation is a central topic in Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so let's go straight into the Upanishad. Shvetaketu Aruneya Asa Tamha Pitovacha Shvetaketu Vasa Brahmacharyam Navai Somya Asmat Kulino Ananucha Brahma Bandhu Riva Bhavatiti Sahadvadasha Varshaha Upetya Chaturvamshi Varshaha Sarvan Vedan Aditya Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabda Eyaya Shvetaketo Yennu Somya Idam Mahamana Anuchanamani Stabdo Uta tam adeshaha aprakshaha yena ashrutam shrutam bhavati amatam matam bhavat avijñātam vijñātam iti katam nu bhagavaha sa adesho bhavati yata somya ekena mritpindena sarvam brinmayam vijñātam syat vacharambana vikaro namadeyam mritika iti eva satyam yata somya ekena lohamanina Sarvam lohamayam vijñātam syat vacharambana vikaro namadeyam lohamani iti eva satyam yata somya ekena nakani krintanena sarvam karshnayasam vijñātam syat vacharambana vikaro namadeyam krishnayasam iti eva satyam evam somya sa adesho bhavati navainunam bhagavantaha Tad etet avedishuhu yad avedishyan katam mena avakshaniti bhagavan stuveva me tad praviti iti tata somya iti hovacha sadeva somya idamagra asid ekameva advitiyam tadaika ahuhur asadeva somya idamagra asid ekameva advitiyam tasmad asatah sajjayata utasta kalu somya idam somya evam syaditi hovacha katam asatah sajjayateti satveva somya idamagra asid ekameva advitiyam tad aikshata bahusyam prajayeya iti tattejo asrijata tatteja aikshata bahusyam prajayeya iti tad apo asrijata tasmad yatra kvacha shochati Svedate va purushas tejasa eva tad adi apo jayante. Ta apa aikshanta bahusyaha syam prajaye mahiti. Ta annam asrujanta. Tasmad yatra kvacha varshati tadeva bhuishtam annam bhavati. Adabhya eva tad adi annam adyam jayate iti dvitiyaha khandaha. So that is where we finished last time. So can I request friends to unmute, please mute their audio, please. There is a bit of echo coming through. If that's all right, please mute your audio. Yeah. So we have done Khanda 1 and Khanda 2, and I just wanted to go through the verses so that we directly get into the substance, and it also gives us an opportunity to get into the sphere of the language of the Upanishads. Yeah. So we've done the first kanda, where our friend Shvetaketu has returned with lots of ego. And his dad asks him a very important question. Yena ashrutam shrutam bhavati amatam matam avijnatam vijnatam iti. So at that point, our friend Shvetaketu is not able to answer that question. So his dad then gets going. Sorry, could somebody mute their audio, please? It's very disturbing. Thank you. So, his father then gives him a lecture as to how you can know this preeminent thing by two ways, either through similarity or through preeminence. So by similarity, by knowing a bigger thing, we know the smaller things. By knowing the smaller thing, we can recognize bigger things. Or by knowing the most prominent thing, we can recognize other things. Or by knowing the most independent thing, then you know all other things that are dependent on it. So that was the substance of the first chapter. And what Uddalaka then does is he goes directly into the second khanda, where he says, how do we understand that the Supreme is the preeminent independent entity in all of existence? And he starts this conversation about creation, and how he said here, Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asi Ekameva Advitiyam. And there he described about how from Sat, from this Janmadhyasya Yataha, from this Brahman, and from the primordial Prakriti, how the universe comes about. And he starts giving us the introduction as to how the universe actually evolves. And Uddalaka gives the views of the ancient rishis as to what they have seen in deep contemplation. Much of the knowledge of our rishis is intuitional, and we have discussed that before. So it is intuitional knowledge rather than intellectual knowledge. Intuitional knowledge that they intue in deep meditation. So this is what the rishis have intuited in deep meditation as to how that sequence of creation comes about. And that is how it has been documented in our Vedas, which, as you know, is Apaurushaya. And by that concept of Apaurushaya, all that has been documented is the intuition of the rishis as how they have perceived the knowledge. Yeah. So Uddalaka is giving us this sequence. So he said, Tat Tejo Asrujata, Tad Apo Asrujata, Annam Asrujanta. So he talks about these three entities, Tejas, Ap, and Annam. And we have spent a lot of time talking about who the Tejas, Ap, and Annam actually is. And I hope I was able to convince you that the Tejas, Ap, and Annam are not the material fire, not the material water, and not the material earth. I hope I convinced you over the last 2 to 3 sessions that we did, including the revision, because in the sequence of creation, among the Panchabhutas, the last 3 to evolve is Tejas, Ap, and Annam. Okay. But here, Uddalaka is saying, when Tad Aikshata Bahusyam Prajayeya iti, the first thing he thought, and then he brought forward Tejas. So that Tejas, the first thing that comes out, cannot be the last thing that has been described in our Sanatana Dharma, which is the Panchabhutas. So that is one simple evidence that I have given you to show that the Tejas, Ap, and Annam has got nothing to do, absolutely nothing to do with fire, water, and earth, which are inert entities. They are jadas. So this has got nothing to do with the jadas. And what Uddalaka is talking about is the evolution of sentient beings, evolution of the various jivas that come into existence, and the jivas have their body as a particular component of the material universe, and how they bring about the universe. Okay. So this is an important point to understand the language of the Upanishads. Wherever you see these bhutas, these names, Tejas, Ap, Annam, Prithvi, and so on coming forth, you should be thinking about an Abhimani Devatas. The reason being, Veda Vyasa has given us that grammar, that's the rules of interpretation of the Vedas. Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Tad Visesha Anugatibhyam. is the Sutra of Veda Vyasa in Vedanta Sutra that actually puts forth the rules for the interpretation of the Vedas. So anybody who interprets this as a material fire and Aap and Annam is very unfortunate that they have not been able to take the spirit of what Veda Vyasa, our Guru, has actually given the instruction as to how we should read the Vedas. Okay, so we established in that spirit of what Veda Vyasa has taught us, that we established that Tejas either means Lakshmi or Chaturmukha Brahma. Aap is Mukhya Prana or Vayu. Annam is Rudra or Shiva. Yeah. So now see how it all falls into place. So the sequence that comes through of Brahman or Vishnu, Mula Prakriti and the Chetana Prakriti as Lakshmi, and Tejas as Chaturmukha, Aap as Mukhya Prana, Annam as Shiva, it falls very well with the Bhagavad Gita chapter 15 of verses 16 and 17. And we have done this on a million occasions. So what I am going to request here is one of you to recite that chapter 15, verse 16 and 17 for us, please. Pragnesh has raised his hands. Pragnesh, go for it.
Thank you very much. Dvamivo purusho loke ksharaschaksara evacha kshara sarvani bhutani kutasthoksara uchyate uttama purusaspanya paratmatmetyudayata yo lokatrayamavishya vivartvatyajya ishvarah.
Pragnesh, thank you very much.
Thank
Very
you.
well recited. So that sequence of verse 16 and 17, what is it saying? Brahman Vishnu is Uttama Purushaha. Mula Prakriti is Kutastaha Aksharaha. And then you have Ksharas. All the fellows from Chaturmukha Brahma, including all of us here, to all the microbial organisms that are there everywhere in the universe. So we all belong to the Kshara group. And then you have the Kutastha Aksharaha, which is Lakshmi. And then you have the Uttama Purushaha, which is Narayana or Krishna or Vishnu or Brahman himself. So that sequence is exactly what our Uddalaka Aruni is actually describing here. And that is the reason why this chapter 15, the last 5 verses of the chapter 15 are the most important. If we understand that the last 5 verses of chapter 15, then our Shastras tell us that we have actually understood the whole of the Vedas. And this is an example that I'm giving you here as to how if we understand those 16 and verse 17 of chapter 15, we will be able to understand the language of Uddalaka in Chandogya Upanishad. Why? Because that Sat is Brahman or Vishnu. That Tejaha is either the Tejas is Lakshmi in her form as Vidya or Tejas as Chaturmukha Brahma. Okay. Then you have Aap and Annam. So these are all the Jivas, Aap and Annam, including Mukhya Prana and Annam and so on. So I hope you find this important, that how the language is all very consistent. And I keep telling about Samanvaya of Shastra. Every angle you look at how the Shastras are describing, nothing is contradictory. Everything falls into place. And things will fall into place only if we read and understand the Shastras properly. Yeah. So when we look at that in that spirit, perfectly it tallies with the sequence. So now you may ask, okay, Uddalaka has a Tatteja, Aap and Annam. So what is the big deal? Why has he gone about in actually bringing forth these preeminent, after Brahman, the next most important components or sentient beings in Sanatana Dharma is Shri Tattva, Chaturmukha, Mukhya Prana, and Shiva or Rudra. So these are all very important sentient entities. Why does Uddalaka bring this forwards? This is the reason why. Because remember, we are talking about creation. So immediately what he does is, Uddalaka says, Tesham Kalvesham Bhutanam Trini Eva Bijani Bhavanti. Andajam, Jivajam, Udbijam iti. Okay. So we need to look at this verse very carefully. So what does it say? Tesham Sarvesham Bhutanam. Okay. The first word there I've underlined for our benefit is Bhutanam, which is important. Then I've made a box there. Trini Eva Bijani. Okay. So Bhutanam. What is Bhutanam mean, what is Bhuta means? And I've got a question so that we are all alert for today's class. So who is going to answer the question, what is Bhuta stands for in Sanatana Dharma? Who is going to tackle that? Okay, so let me take this. Next time I'm going to pick on one of us. So Bhutanam, Bhuta essentially means, Nita, you raised your hands? No.
Yeah, Bhuta is Jivas. It can also mean Paramatma.
Okay, Bhutas. Okay. Thank you, Sushruth. Anybody else? Okay, so yeah, well done, Sushruth. So you got the concept right there. So Bhutas means primarily sentient beings. Yeah, sentient beings are called Bhutas. Why? Okay, so the definition of Bhuta comes from Bhuti or Unnati, or that which has the capacity to elevate herself or himself, that which has a capacity to elevate. So that is called Bhuta. A stone does not have a capacity to elevate itself. It's only a sentient being that has a capacity to elevate itself. Yeah. So that definitely means a Jiva. So one meaning of Bhuta is Jiva Jata. All the community of souls are called Bhutas. Okay. Now in the Puranas and also in the Upanishads and Vedas, Bhuta Gana. So you would have all heard about Bhuta Ganas. Shiva's Bhuta Gana, Ganapati's Bhuta Ganas. So their Gana means group, Bhuta means Jiva. So Deva Ganas, certain Deva Ganas are also called Bhutas. Okay. Technically, Bhuta means Bhavati iti Bhutam. That which exists is Bhuta. So it is not just the souls that exist, but there are also all these non-living things that we see around us. They also exist. So in that sense, they are also called Bhutas. And that's why we call them as Panchabhutas, the five Bhutas. And then, of course, you have the Mahanarayana Upanishad, which is Eko Vishnuhu Mahad Bhutam Prutak Bhutam Anekashaha. That's a very clear statement, saying that there is only one fellow called Vishnu who is Mahad Bhutam. Prutak means different. Prutak Bhutam Anekashaha. Anekashaha means or many. Yeah. So there are many Jivas and there is one Mahad Bhutam. Okay. There are many atomic sentient things and there is one infinite Bhutam, Mahad Bhutam. So Bhutanam has various meanings. So what we have to do is take that in context. Prakarana is important when we understand the Upanishad. So here, what does that Prakarana is? Tesham sarvesham bhutanam. Bhutanam there means all these living entities that are there, that are coming into creation. Yeah. All these living entities that come into creation are the bhutas. Okay. Now watch the next word very carefully. Okay. So that bhutanam Trini eva bijani bhavanti. Okay, so that is important there to understand that in context. So Trini eva bijani bhavanti. Yeah, so I'm going to stop here for a minute. I'm getting some echoes. So could I request somebody who is unmuted to please mute, please? Okay. So Bhutanam Trini eva bijani bhavanti. So these bhutas, how do they come about? For that, Uddalaka says, Trini eva bijani bhavanti. These three become the source of the creation of the living entities in existence. Trini means three. Yeah. Who are those three? Trini eva bijani bhavanti. Tejas apanannam. So these three entities, these three tattvas become the source of the creation of the bhutas. Okay, so that is the meaning of that. Now there is a twist here and I've got a question. If jivas are uncreated, what does creation for the jivas actually mean? Because we have done this on so many occasions. Jivas are uncreated. But then this verse is saying, Tesham kalvesham bhutanam trini eva bijani bhavanti. So who is going to answer that question? What does creation for jivas mean?
Linking into the body?
Thank you, Deval. Yes, correct answer. So, Jivas, of course, Natvevaham Jatunasam, Natvam Neme Janadipaha, Nachaiva na Bhavishyamaha, Sarve Vayam, Ataha Param. So, just like me, who is Anadi Nitya, Jivas are also Anadi Nitya. Krishna has categorically said in the very first verse of philosophy, in chapter 2, verse 12. That is the first verse of philosophy of Krishna. And that very first verse categorically establishes there is me and then there are jivas. All of both groups. I am one distinct group, and then these jivas are there. We all exist forever. So, what does that creation actually mean? That creation for the jivas then means that somehow the jivas get attached with a material body or stula sharira. Okay, they get attached to a stula sharira. That is the creation for the jivas. So that is what Uddalaka is telling when he says, Tesham kalu esham bhutanam triniyeva bijani bhavanti. For those stula bodies or gross bodies that the jivas acquire, these three chaps are responsible. They are the source of those bodies for the jivas. Triniyeva bijani bhavanti. Okay. So now the jivas come into existence. Now, Uddalaka says when the jivas come into existence, there are only three ways in which jivas can come into existence. That is, there is only three ways in which jivas can acquire a gross material body. What is that? Andajam, Jivajam, Udbijam, Iti. Okay, so we briefly touched upon this last week. So, Andajam means oviparous, the ones that come through eggs. Yeah, birds, reptiles, etc. Then you have the viviparous, they are the jivajam, the mammalians that come out, and somehow I like to include parthenogenesis also in this group. Yeah, some of you in biology will be familiar with parthenogenesis. If some of you are not, please go and do some research. So jivajam. Then you have udbijam, the ones that come from seeds, and then they acquire a body which is called the plant, and they get on with life.
Class gala.
Yeah. So the jivas acquire the gross body, and the gross bodies that they acquire is through three means. That is andajam, jivajam, and udbijam iti. Okay, so I hope this verse makes it extremely clear. And again, I'm getting a lot of echo today. I don't know why we got lots of disturbance. Could I request folks to unmute, to mute, please? Thank you. Let me see whose audio needs muting. Okay, fine. I have done the muting myself. Right. So andajam, jivajam, udbijam iti. So once he started the sequence of creation, he immediately says, look, jivas, they acquire gross bodies. And those gross bodies, they acquire by three means. And for acquisition of these three means through which they get the gross bodies, these three fellows, Tejas and Ap and Annam, are very important. Okay. Now here is an important concept I wanted to introduce. In Sanatana Dharma, every living being has got a soul. For some of you who may be familiar, this is not an universal concept. There are some philosophies and religions in this world that do not believe that animals have souls. Okay, very unfortunate philosophy, but that is the philosophy, that animals do not have souls. It's only the humans that have souls. So there is a lot of there is a huge population out there that believes this concept, whereas in Sanatana Dharma, Chandogya Upanishad has made it very clear that Bhutanam Triniyeva Bijani Bhavanti Andajam Jivajam Udbijamiti. So every living entity has got soul in it, not just the humans. And on the Independence Day, I just wanted to pick up a verse from Mahatma Gandhi, who essentially said the greatest of a nation, the greatness of a nation and its morals basically depends on how that nation and society treats its animals. Yeah. And Gandhi made this very important statement. And yet we have many societies that still believe that animals do not have souls, and their whole sole purpose out there is they become food for humans. Yeah. think about that view and think about what our Uddalaka has actually said here about how Jivas come into being. Okay. So let's move on. So then what he says is, now the question is, so how do these Tejas, Ap and Annam, that is Chaturmukha, Mukhya Prana and Shiva or Rudra, how do they go about bringing these bodies? Okay. Next verse is very important to understand that. So what is that verse saying? Seyam Devata Aikshata Hanta Aham Ima Tisro Devata Anena Jivena Atmana Anupravishya Nama Rupa Vyakaravan Iti. Okay. So this is how the sequence happens. This is how the creation happens, says Uddalaka. So what happened there? Seyam Devata Aikshata. Okay. So there are two Devatas here. If you can see this line, say I am Devata Aikshata Anta Aham Imam. Then there is Tisro Devata. Okay. Tisro means again three. Devata means Devata. So there he's talking about two things here. Say I am. I am means what? That which is next to me, that which is very close to me, that which is in front of me is I am. Say I am Devata Aikshata. So what does that mean? Devata there means, again, we should look at etymology of words. So what does Devata mean? Some folks think Devata means that which illumes, that which is illuminating is Devata. That is fine. But Devata, etymology of that is Deveshu Tata equals Devata. Tata means what? That which pervades, that which enters, that which goes into everything. Okay. Devasha, Deveshu Tata, Devata. Whereas there is also another etymology of Devata. Devanam Samuhaha Devata. Samuhaha means a group. So group of Devas are also called Devata. And Deveshu Tata is also called Devata. So you use these kind of grammar etymology to understand what is it that Uddalaka is telling us. So when he says, say, I am Devata Aikshata, we are familiar with that word Aikshata. Aikshata means to see, to view, to desire, to think. So we know that is a sentient being. Then I am that which is close to me. If I am Atma, then Paramatma is very close to me. So this I am then should indicate this Devata. Now this Devata is, he pervades everywhere. That is why he is called Devata. That is why he is called Brahman. Bruhanto hi asmin gunaha is Brahma. Vishnu, Vishal Vyapto, that which pervades is called Vishnu. So when I say Devata, or when I say Brahman, or when I say Vishnu, it is exactly the same. Okay. So say I am Devata Aikshata. Look at the next word. This is the beauty and the greatness of our Vedas. Every word actually has a relevance. So when he says aham, yeah, hanta, aham. Aham means what? Not just I. Aham means the deep etymology. Aham is aheyatvat aham nama. That which is undiscardable and is in everything is called aham. So that aham is a name of the Supreme Lord. His name is aham because he is aheyatvad. We cannot discard him. Yeah. So it's, so what does it say? Say I am Devata Aikshata Hanta Aham. So this guy, this Brahman thought and said, I Imaha Tisro Devataha. So he's showing his hands and saying, Imaha Tisro Devataha. Okay. So I will enter these fellows, Chaturmukha, Mukhya Prana, and Shiva. Okay. I will enter these fellows and do what? What is it that he is desiring? And he says, Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. Yeah, Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. Okay, so this is a complicated word, and it has different acharyas have looked at it from different angles to come up with an interpretation. Let me give you the view of what Jiva actually means from Pancharatra Agamas. So you might have heard about Pancharatras. These are very, very sacred and authoritative scriptures that is there in Sanatana Dharma. Pancharatra Agama gives a definition of who or what Jiva is. Colloquially, we have all understood Jiva means you and I. Jivas means souls. That is fine. Jivas mean souls, but in a higher sense. So remember, Vedic philosophy always talks about higher philosophy, what is called as Parama Mukhya Vritti. What is the ultimate meanings of every word in the Vedas? Pancharatra gives you a clue there. It says Jiva iti Anuruddhasya Akhyaha. Yeah. Pancharatra says Jiva is a name of Anuruddha form of Brahman or Narayana. Okay, so we know the Vuha forms. So I'm going to pause there for a minute. Who is going to remind us as to what are the Vuha forms of Narayana? Any takers? Okay, so the Vuha forms, as you know, is Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, and Narayana. And Pancharatra Agamas celebrate a lot on these Vuha forms of the Lord. And in that scripture, there is a definition. This Anuruddha form of the Supreme is also called Jiva. Okay. And then there is also another interpretation of Jiva called Jiva Prana Dharani. Okay. So Prana is who? Mukhya Prana. Dharane means holding. Who holds the Mukhya Prana? This chap is with the Vedic pantheon, he is number 2 or number 3. Sorry, number 3. He is the highest in the Vedic pantheon. Who holds the Mukhya Prana? Not me as a Jiva. I don't hold the Mukhya Prana. It is the Supreme Being who holds the Mukhya Prana by entering him. Okay, so Jiva Prana Dharane as a definition of Jiva essentially means it's Brahman or Vishnu or Narayana. It is not the souls here. And again, the reason why I'm introducing this is so as we step up our interpretation and understanding of the Upanishads and the Vedas, we need to be looking at these kind of subtle aspects to actually get the meaning of it. So I hope I'm able to convince you for now. Just hold on to that thought that the word Jiva actually has several meanings. There is the Vritti, there is the Mukhya Vritti, there is the Parama Mukhya Vritti. Those are 3 levels of interpreting language is what the Vedic rishis have taught us. And in the highest sense, Parama Mukhya Vritti, Jiva Pranadharane, Jiva iti Anuruddhasyakyaha. Okay, means the Supreme Being. Now, I'm going to pause a minute and ask, what is the meaning of Anuruddha? It's all fine saying Anuruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Vasudeva. So the word Anuruddha also needs to have a meaning, isn't it? So we have described this a lot of times that the names of the Supreme, they are not proper nouns. They actually describe a quality or celebrate a particular attribute of the Lord who has infinite attributes. We cannot contemplate on all attributes with our own mundane, limited intelligence. We can only comprehend a few attributes, and the Shastras tell us he is called Anuruddha. Okay, so what does Anuruddha actually mean? Anybody wants to contribute here? We might have lots of friends who have Anuruddha as their names. What does Anuruddha mean? Okay, silence again. So I'll tell you what the meaning of Anuruddha is, which you will find. Sorry.
It says in Google, it says, I'm just looking at it, unrestrained, without obstacles and unstoppable.
Okay, good. Yes, Google may have got it a little bit right there. So don't trust Google always, they will. But this time around, I think probably I'll give 40 to 50%. Okay, maybe. So what does that mean? Niruddha. So you just break it open. Aniruddha. Niruddha. Niruddha means obstacle. Yeah, Niruddha means obstacle. Aniruddha means he who does not have any obstacles, which means he doesn't have any obstacles, so he can go inside everything and he can go wherever he wants and he can go inside wherever he wants. There you see again the meanings. Devata Aikshata, I've told you Deveshu Tata, Brahman, Vishnu, Jiva. I've said Jiva is also called Anuruddha. Anuruddha means that entity that can enter into everything without any obstacles. So when you align all these things, they all make perfect sense. So Jivena Atmana means as in his Swarupa. The Brahman in his Swarupa as Anuruddha form. And for those of you who have read Bhagavatam and elsewhere, you would realize Anuruddha form of the Lord is the one that is responsible for creation. Yeah. Why is the Anuruddha form of the Lord responsible for creation? For all the reason that I've just given you. So Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. So he thought and he desired me in my Anuruddha form, because I do not have any obstacles and I can go into everything. I am going to enter into this Tejasanamaka Lakshmi, also called Vidya. I am going to enter into Chaturmukha Brahma. I am going to enter into Mukhya Prana. I am going to enter into Shiva. And do what? Nama Rupa Vyakaravaniti. I am going to create this universe of names and forms. Okay, so that is what our Supreme Brahman desired, and that is what Uddalaka is telling us. Remember, we are still talking about the sequence of creation. So in that sequence of creation, the first sequence there is this chap Aikshata, desire to create, and he enters into Vidya, Chaturmukha, Mukhya Prana and Shiva, and creates Nama Rupa Vyakaravaniti. He just decided, let me create this. Okay, so here is another important concept for us. Last week, I think we touched upon it, that even for the creation of our bodies, at fertilization, Brahman, Jiva, Lakshmi, Chaturmukha, Shiva, and all families of the Brahman enter into that egg at the point of fertilization. So the Vedic view about life is life begins at fertilization. It is not at viability. Life begins at fertilization. I just thought I'll introduce that concept here. Also, Brahma and Atma, Sat and Jiva, they all get discussed in philosophies. Brahma is the Brahmanda form. Atma is the Pindanda form. Sat is Brahmanda form. Jiva is Pindanda form of the Supreme. When you look at it in this concept, and my humble request is don't get confused the Jiva concept that I am discussing here with the soul. They are two different things. Okay. So this is important, who this Atma and who is Jiva is, because in the same Chandogya Upanishad, when we come a few weeks from now, when we talk about this famous Tattvamasi and the 9 examples, there is one example. Asya somya mahato vrikshasya yo mule abhyahanyad jivan shraved. Yad madhye abhyahanyad jivan shraved. Yad agre abhyahanyad jivan shraved. Yesha Jivena Atmana Anuprabhutaha Pepiyamano Modamanattishtati. Same word Uddalaka uses. Here he is saying Jivena Atmana Anupravishya. And later he uses Jivena Atmana Anuprabhutaha. Anuprabhutaha, Anupravishyaha, they're all synonymous. Yeah. So this Jiva concept is important, and I hope you'll remember it when we deal with it next. But the summary of this slide is, this chap desired, and he desired to enter. There is a similar verse in Taittiriya Upanishad that you are all very familiar with. So akamayat bahusyam prajayeya iti satapo atapyata satapastaptva yidang sarvam asrujata yadidam kincha tat shrishtva tadeva anupravishata. Okay. Tadeva anupravishata jivena atmana anupravishya. So they're all the same. They talk the same thing when you look at this. So next, what happens now? I want to introduce, this is a busy slide, but hopefully you will find this interesting as to how beautifully Uddalaka talks about this sequence of creation. So he said, okay, I decide that I will enter and then I'll start the creation process. Okay. So then what happened? Tasam Trivritim, Trivritim, Ekaikam, Karavaniti. Sevayam, Devatam, Tisro Devata, Anenaiva Jivena Atmana Anupravishya Nama Rupa Vyakarot. So what does that mean? So this fellow desired, Brahman desired that I'm going to enter into Chaturmukha, Vayu and Shiva, and I'm going to start creation. When he desired, it happened. Vyakarot, it just happened. Icha matram prabho srishti, the Shushrut was talking about last week. If he desires, then it happens. For us, we have to desire, then we have to have the knowledge, then we have to make an effort, then we create something. For him, everything is the same. So if he has Icha, then he creates. Okay. So Uddalaka says he desired and it happened. Okay. So now we need to understand some fundamentals here before we understand what is it that Uddalaka is talking when he's saying Trivritam, Trivritam. Okay. Trivritam, Trivritam. What does that mean? Okay. Essentially, Trivrit means mixture. Mixing up is Trivrit. Yeah. Just hold on to that idea. Mixing is Trivrit. So let's go through the sequence, and we are all now very familiar. You have Mula Prakriti, Shribu Durga, then Mula Prakriti combines, forms Mahat, which forms the body of Chaturmukha. An aspect of Mahat then becomes Ahankara. Ahankara, the Rudra is Abhimani of Ahankara, which is a subtle form of matter. That subtle form of matter becomes three: Vaikarika, Tejasa, and Tamasa. Tamasa then becomes Panchatarmatras and Panchabhutas. Vaikarika and Tejas becomes Manas and Indriyas. A component of Mahat and Tejasa then becomes Buddhi. So these are all the sequences and systems that is given in the Sanatana Dharma. Why? And I have sort of covered, I've given you, put them in boxes. So that aspect of Shiva's body called Tamasa Ahankara becomes Panchatanmatra and then Panchabhutas. Panchabhutas are the Akasha, Vayu, Tejas, Ap and Prithvi, the material things that you see. Okay? They become the Panchabhutas. So your body and my body, which actually is a non-material, is a non-living thing. Our body is non-living thing. It feels like it's living because there is a Jiva inside. We have to get that very clear. This body is also made of Panchabhutas, and there are no controversies there. Primarily Tejas, Ap and Annam. It is made up of, Tejas, Ap and Annam is primarily what the body is made of, but it needs air to breathe and it needs a space to be in. That is why you need Panchabhutas, and that is why you say this body is Panchabhutas. Whereas these evolutes of the Ahankara Tattva, Vaikarika and Tejas, they are all form part of a body that has certain components by which it can interact with a jada. Yeah. Stone, for example, has got Panchabhutas in it. Okay, but the stone does not perceive anything. But a body, a human body like yours and mine, has got Indriyas, Manas, and Buddhi, and so on, along with the Panchabhutas. Why? Because these evolutes of matter is required so that we are able to interact with the Panchabhutas. So when the Vaikarika, evolutes of Vaikarika and Tejasa, along with Tamasa are there, then we have a Jiva with a body that interacts with the external world. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. So this is the mixing that he is talking about. So these three fellows, Mahat, Ahankara, and the Vayu. Vayu is the one that gives volition for all this. So these three fellows, what this Anuruddha does is he enters into Brahma, Vayu, and Shiva, and then he mixes, he is the independent fellow who instructs these three entities. Now guys, mix yourself, go into various types of mixtures, and there you get the genius of our Sanatana Dharma, because that mixture in various ratios and combinations and permutations is what this varied universe is, be it the jada or be it the living entities. Each living entity, starting from a microbe to plants to animals to humans, they all have a combination of all these Tejasa, Vaikarika, and Tamasa, but in different proportions. Humans probably have buddhi and their manas and indriyas. I won't even say indriyas, but buddhi and manas, probably there is more component of that. Whereas if you go into the trees, trees have very little of this, but still there is an element by which they interact with the external world. So it is this mixture is what the Uddalaka is telling us. How does that mixture happen? This Brahma, Vayu and Shiva, under the instruction of Paramatma who has entered into them in the Anuruddha form, he allows this mixture to happen. Tasam trivritim ekaikam akarod. Yatha tu kalu somya ima tisro devataha tisro trivritim ekekam bhavati tanme vijanehiti. It's a very complex sentence, but to understand this complex sentence, we need to have these foundations right as to what is this trivrit mixing up. Okay, it is these three fellows mixing up in various combinations that brings about these living beings in three forms: Andajam, Jivajam, and Udbijam. Okay, so there are two creations, right? Brahmanda and Pindanda, and that is all covered in this. Okay, now what Uddalaka says is, mate, this is all sounding a bit too complicated for you. Let me make it a bit simple. And as we said before, Uddalaka is a philosopher par excellence. Complex concepts, he will give some examples and make us understand these complex concepts of how creation came about. This is the view of the rishis, of the Vedas. Yeah, how the creation came about. So the next slide. So that is what takes us to the fourth kanda, which talks about, it gives some examples. If you remember, in the first chapter, to give an example of sadrishya and pradanya, he talks about mritpinda, lohamani, nakani krintana. Here, to talk about how these three components, Chaturmukha, Lakshmi, and Shiva, how these fellows are there mixed up in every component of the universe. How can we as mundane beings understand that? This is all about upasanas. Yeah? How do we understand this? So this is what the Chaturtha Kandaha is all about. And hopefully I'll be able to deal with some of these. It becomes a bit easy after this. So the first thing he takes is Yadagre rohitam roop, yat agnehe rohitam roopam, tat tejasi tadrupam, yat shuklam tadapam, yat krishlam tad annam. Yeah, annam. Apagad agner agnitvam, vacharambana vikaro namadeyam, thridi rupani iti eva satyam. So our vacharambana has come here again. If you remember the first verse, Ekena mritpindena sarvam rinmayam vijnatam syat vacharambana vikaro namadeyam mritika iti eva satyam was what the verse in the first kanda. Here it is vacharambana vikaro namadeyam Trini Rupani iti eva satyam. So now the Trini Rupani, I hope, makes sense. The Trini Rupani are these fellows. Yeah, Shiva, Vayu, and Brahma. Brahma, Vayu, Shiva. They are there everywhere in the universe. Yeah, they are exalted beings that we should worship. Brahma, Vayu, and Shiva. Yeah, why? This is what he is going to say next to Uddalaka. So when I say Trini Rupani iti eva satyam, the Trini Rupani, there is Brahma, Vayu, and Shiva. So what Uddalaka takes is, he is giving examples. Look, this again tells you in the Vedic times what were all the things that were available. So you have fire. What are the things that are bright in the Vedic times that people used to look at? So you had fire, you had daytime, you had the sun, nighttime, you had the moon, and then when it is raining, you have the lightning. Yeah. So Agni, Surya, Chandra, and Vidyut. Lightning, as you know, in Sanskrit is called Vidyut. So these are the four examples. So our Uddalaka takes in Brahmanda. So first he takes the Brahmanda aspect of creation. Yes, he says, look, this Brahma, Vayu, and Shiva are there in Brahmanda, and how you can understand and bring it to your cognizance that these three fellows are mixed, and that is why those things are there in the external world. I shall teach you with a few examples. So I am first going to take Agni. Let us split this verse. Yad agnehe rohitam rupam tat tejasi tadrupam. So he says, when you look at the fire, there are 7 colors in the fire. Our Vedic rishis had completely worked all the wavelengths out, all the energies out, and they have already said Shapta Jihva, that fire has 7 flames. And the 7 flames is the same as the 7 colors of the sun. And that is why the sun has 7 horses. So they had this spectrum, visible spectrum, completely worked out. And he takes 3 colors. Red, Rohita means red, Shuklam means white, Krishnam means dark. So these are all the components of light. So Rohita means anything that is reddish. It could be red, orange. Yeah, they all grouped under red. So he says, when you look at the fire, you see various colors, right? Understand that, get that upasana there. Yad agnehe rohitam rupam tat tejasi tat tejasaha tad rupam. When you see the red flame in the fire, remember that the redness of the fire is because that aspect of Chaturmukha Brahma is there. Okay. Yet shuklam tad apam. When you see the bright components in the fire, what appears as white in color, that component is because there is the prana form there in that fire. Yet Krishnam tad annasya. When you see the dark ones, dark means not just black. It could be violet, it could be indigo, it could be blue. All these things, the darkness becomes the Krishna. Yeah. So yet Krishnam tad annasya. So Uddalaka is teaching us some techniques here as to how to contemplate these 3 giants of Vedic pantheon. Yeah, Brahma, Vayu, and Shiva. How do we contemplate these Vedic pantheons in our daily worship? And he says, look, when you look at the fire, you see these 3 components, right? Now, these 3 components are because of Chaturmukha, Prana, and Shiva. And when they mix up, you get additional colors. Okay? According to Vedic view, these are the 3 basic colors, and everything is the mixture of that. And I've shown you in fire, and I took a picture from Google from our own gas, and I've taken for Bunsen burner, where you can get all these colors in the fire. Okay, now look at this word Agni that comes here, and then does this then mean it is the make mean Agni Devatas? Okay, Uddalaka has very clearly says Apagad Agner Agnitvam. You know, these fellows, the Agni Devatas or the material Agni, they have got the name Agni just in the secondary sense. Yeah, that is why he says Apagad Agner Agnitvam Vacharambana Vikaro Namadeyam. For whom? For these fellows, Agni Devata and the material Agni, the name Agni that is given to them is in a secondary sense, just as a name, like you and me, we have names, right? What does that mean? When I'm called Madhusudana, I have no attributes of Madhusudana. It is just a name that we have. Similarly, these fellows, Agni, for example, you have the Pradhana Agni, but Agni, actually, there are 49 Agnis. I don't think we have time to discuss that. Agni Putras, Suchi, Pavamana, and Pavaka, each one of them have 15 children. So actually, there are 49 Agnis in Vedic pantheon. Okay? And then, of course, you have the material fire. So the verse there says, these apagad agner agnitvam. So these fellows are called in a secondary sense, only namadeya for them. Okay. Whereas Trini, Rupani, Itieva Satyam, these 3 fellows, Brahmavayu and Shiva, they are the real Agnis. Okay, now this is interesting. Some of you may not have heard about this before. How can Shiva, Chaturmukha, Vayu, Lakshmi, how can they all be called Agnis? Now, Shiva is also called Kalagni Rudra. Some of you who worship Shiva, I do every week when I do my puja. So Kalagni Rudra. Mukhya Prana is called Prana Agni. Okay, and in Shri Sukta, the very first verse of Shri Sukta, some of you may be reciting is Hiranya Varanam Harinim, and it goes on. And the invocation there is, O Agni Narayana, your Lakshmi, who is the attribute of fire, prompt her to make us worship you. Even Lakshmi is called Agni there. And then, of course, you have Agni Narayana. Okay, so the word Agni is at various levels. To just take it as material Agni or just Agni Devata is extremely superficial, and it just does not serve our purpose. And that takes you to this concept of Rigveda, right? Rigveda is the very first contribution of humans. It is the first text of mankind, we are told. And what is the very first word of Rigveda? The very first sukta of Rigveda is Agni Suktam. Yeah, and the very first word is Agnim Ile Purohitam. Yagnasya Devam Rutvijam Hotaram Ratnadatamam. Agni. Agni is the very first word of the Rig Veda. Why? Not just because, there is this view of some, I dare say illiterates. There's some people who think, oh, our Vedic rishis were worshipping nature, looking at fire, etc., fire, rain, and that is how they worship. They are like some wild animals worshipping these things. This is far from truth. It just exposes their ignorance. Their understanding of our Vedas is just not good enough. When people accuse Sanatana Dharma as worshipping natural things. Yes, you worship natural things because there is this Supreme Paramatma who is inside it with that name. So when I say Agni, when I say Agni Mile Purohitam, I'm not talking about material Agni. I'm not talking about Agni Putras or the Pradhan Agni. I am thinking about these four Agnis, and I'm thinking about this most important Agni, Agni Narayana. Yeah. So that is how the Upasanas progress in the Vedas. So I just want to pick this and impress upon you as to how that word Agni is so important, which is the very first word. Yet the very first word of Agni Sukta has been misinterpreted in the modern universities, which is so embarrassing, and it just exposes the level of ignorance that is there in the Western academics when they interpret the Agni Mile Purohitam verse of the Agni Sukta. And I've heard this from various professors of universities who murder this word Agni. Here is the real meaning of Agni as given to us by our acharyas with evidence from the Vedas. When the Rigveda celebrates Agni Mile Purohitam, that Agni there, the etymology of Agni is A plus Ga plus Ni, you split it open. Agre Niyati, Agrayatvad, Agre Nayati, Attim, Angam Nayati, Agam Nayati. This is how you understand Agni. There are 6 levels of understanding of Agni, but I'll just give you 2 easy ones. Agni Shabdo Ayam Agna Eva Abhipujyatam. That which is the first, which is the most adorable and the most worshipable is Agni, which is nothing else from the Supreme Lord himself, who is the first to be adored. Agre Niyati. Agrayatvad, first and foremost of all. Agre Nayati, prime mover of all. That is the etymology of Agni. A plus Ga plus Ni. Take the Ga. Ga means Gachati, that moves. Aga means that which does not move or that which is inert. Ni means Niyati, that which prompts things that is inert to move. Okay? That is the literal meaning of Agni. So yes, when you heat up something, it goes into vibration and it moves. That is the material Agni. But the one that gives the primary volition for everything is that Agni that is celebrated as Agni Narayana, the prime mover of all. Atiti Agni. When you throw anything into fire, it eats everything. Similarly, he is the devourer of all. He is the one who destroys the universe. He is Agni, activator of bodies of all. Activator of all and else, otherwise they remain inert. So these are all the meanings of Agni. Yeah. So to say that the Vedic rishis were worshipping nature is very ill-informed, superficial teaching that is currently prevailing in the universities. The real meaning of Agni is Agni Narayana, Agni Lakshmi, Prana Agni, Kala Agni Rudra, Kala Agni Durga. So that is what is Agni actually means. So now I'm not sidetracking here, but I actually want to bring it back to impress upon you that when he says these Agnis are apagad agner agnitvam vacharambana vikaro namadeyam trini rupani iti eva satyam. Okay, so we should be thinking about these when you look at these flames, and also realize that there is this Antaryami who is inside this in the Anuruddha form called Agni Narayana, who is the supreme Agni. Okay, so again, Uddalaka is giving us mundane examples. So next time when you get instructions to do some cooking and you turn on the hob, and when you see the flames, when you look at the three colors, I hope you will remind yourself as to what Uddalaka has said about how Rudra and Shiva, Vayu and Chaturmukha brings the universe into creation. Okay, the same thing about Surya, and he takes the sun as the next example. Adityasya rohitam rupam tad tejas tad rupam yat shuklam tad apam yat krishnam tad annam apagad adityad aditvam vacharambana vikaro namadeyam trini rupani iti eva satyam. It's the same concept. Now we all know, we see the sun as yellow or white because that is the wavelength that predominates, but NASA studies the sun in different wavelengths in different colors. Okay, so you need to go into the NASA website, into their solar research portal, and have a look at how in different wavelengths the sun is studied. Okay, and our rishis have given that there is the red component of the sun, there is the blue component of the sun, there is the white component of the sun. Okay, and it says when you see the red, the white, and the dark component of the sun, remember that sun is there because these three fellows have mixed up to bring that sun under the divine guidance of the Supreme. That is what Gayatri Mantra is all about. We have done several sessions on Gayatri. We call Surya Narayana, right? This Aditya, this Surya Devata with 7 horses is just apagad adityad adityatvam vacharambana vikaro namadeyam. So this material sun and the fellow who is there looking after it is only for Namke Vaste. He is only secondary. Whereas this real Adityas are Shiva, Prana, Chaturmukha, Lakshmi, and Surya Narayana. Why? Again, you look at the etymology of Aditya. What does Aditya mean? Adau Bhavaha, Adihi. Adau Bhavaha means that one who is there before creation. Adihi, the one who brings into creation. Adatte, the one that absorbs everything. So this is interesting. The sun, for example, it absorbs water. Similarly, every time the sun rises and the sun sets, it absorbs 1 day of our life. When we get up tomorrow morning, we should realize that we are 1 day close to death. That's why it's called Adatte iti Aditya. Then, of course, Aditi's son. Aditi had 12 children. Okay, and one of them is this Aditya. Okay, and there are 11 others, including the 12th one, who is called Vamana, who is Vishnu's incarnation himself. Okay, so Aditya again is a big concept, but primarily the Aditya, Adau Bhavaha, Adihi, Adatte iti Adityaha, the 12th son of Aditi is called Vamana. These are the fellows who is Surya Narayana, who is the primary Aditya. Whereas this fellow, the material son of the Aditya, is only secondary name. Trini Rupani iti eva satyam. So when you see these wavelengths, you understand that these fellows, these three, and the Narayana are actually really called Surya or Aditya. Similarly to the moon, Uddalaka says, when you see the moon tonight, when you look at the moon, again, I've picked up a picture from Google Image. It gives you all the colors of the moon. We are only used to seeing the moon as white, and then there's some dark bits here and there. But that is not actually the color of the moon. Moon has various colors. And that is what our rishis have also said. Yat chandramaso rohitam rupam tejasi tadrupam yashuklam tadapam yat krishnam tadannasya apaga chandrasya chandratvam vacharambana vikaro namadeyam trini rupani iti eva satyam. So similar kind of concept. Chandra and moon is only secondary name, whereas the real Chandras are these fellows. Look at Chandrasekhara. Where does that word Chandrasekhara comes from? Shiva. Think about that and think about Uddalaka. Okay, and in Sri Shukta, The Lakshmi is celebrated as Chandram. And of course, Ramachandra, we call him as Ramachandra. Why? Chandra means Chadi Ahlade or Chanda. That is, that which is pleasant for us to see is called Chandra. Nighttime, when we look at the moon, it is pleasant. So that is why it is called Chandra. The Supreme Lord is the most pleasant to see, and that is why he is called Ramachandra. So is Chandrasekhara. So is Vayu. So is Chaturmukha. So is Lakshmi. So even when the Chandra, when you look at the deeper sense, it either means these three, these three entities, or Lakshmi or Ramachandra. And then finally, Uddalaka says, when you go out, when it rains and you see the colors of lightning, and again, I picked it from Google image, look at the various colors of the lightning and appreciate the observership of our Vedic rishis. They had actually observed the lightning in close details and have observed the lightning is of different colors. And that exactly is what they are saying here. Yad vidyuto rohitam rupam tad tejasi tad rupam yad shuklam tadapam yad krishnam tadannasya. Okay. The vidyuto vidyutvam vacharambana vikaro namadeyam trini rupani. Now, Vidyut has got various Abhimani deities. I've just taken Indra as an example. You have Parjanya and others. So Indra and the lightning, they are only secondary names. The real name Vidyut goes to Shiva, Mukhya Prana, Chaturmukha, Lakshmi, and Narayana. Why? Vidyut means flash. Flash means not just a flash of light, but actually, if I told you in the very first slide, when I told you about this intuition, intuitional knowledge, that is the correct, that is the real knowledge, is intuitional knowledge, not intellectual knowledge generated using one's sense organs and its interpretation of the external world. Intuition is that appears, that comes to the soul by intuition. Yeah. So that intuitional knowledge is also called Vidyut. And the Supreme Lord, when you have Aparoksha Jnana, when you reach that stage, when you see the Supreme Lord, you see him as a flash. You don't see him constantly. So says the Shastras. So that is also called, that is why it is also called Vidyut. So there are some subtle concepts there. We don't have time to go into the details of that, but I hope you are able to appreciate next time when you see Surya, Chandra, Vidyut, and Agni, and you look at red, white, and dark colors in that, then you should remind yourself of Chaturmukha Brahma. You should remind yourself of Vayu. You should remind yourself of Shiva. One thing I forgot to tell you there is, when you think about these, the consorts are also there. Shiva Parvati, Prana Bharati, Chaturmukha Saraswati, Lakshmi Narayana. So these are the primary entities of Sanatana Dharma. Now it would make sense as to why in our temples we have these altars, these rooms where you go and do some archana or whatever for these deities. Okay, the reason is their preeminent role in creation under the instruction of the Supreme, according to the Vedas. That is why we worship them. We worship them not as independent entities that can give us the moksha. Only Narayana can give us moksha. But to reach that Narayana, it is absolutely essential that we worship these entities, is the dictum of the Sanatana Dharma. Okay, so I hope again you realize how these concepts over hundreds and thousands of years have diversified, and then it has become more and more fanatical. Oh, I am a Shaivite. Oh, I am a Shakta. Oh, I am a Dvaitin. Oh, I am a Ganesha worshipper. Oh, I worship only Lakshmi. So it's all those things that is all our own ignorance. But actually, if you go into the Upanishads, the knowledge there is very clear, talking about Brahma Saraswati, Prana Bharati, Shiva Parvati, and Lakshmi Narayana. Okay. So this brings to this important concept of what's called Sarva Shabda Vachyatva. Okay, so every word, and I've told this to you so many times before, that every sound, every word is an epithet of the Supreme. Okay? But from Uddalaka's perspective, every sound, every word is not only the celebration of the Supreme Lord, but it is also a celebration of Lakshmi, Chaturmukha, Prana, and Shiva and their consorts. They are also, you understand them, every word implies them, but in the highest sense, they imply Narayana. And in the Mukhya Vritti, they imply these. And by Vritti, Namadeyam, they imply other things. That is from Indra all the way to us, it implies us. So I put a box here, say again, reminding us all that the Supreme should be worshipped along with his family, Parivara Devatas, because of this, not because of some sentimentality. It is because of their preeminent role during creation. If these chaps had not done the hard work, we would not be here. And that is why they are worthy of our worship. Yeah. So, and I put a question here. What is our role in all this? Nothing. We didn't create anything. We did not create this body. This Jiva also, we are coming to this being just because somebody decided we have to come into this being. So everything, nothing is under our control. So Uddalaka, by bringing forth all these concepts, is going back to the first kanda and saying, why are you Aditya Mahamana Anuchanamani? Why are you standing there like a pillar with so much arrogance? What is your role in everything? You think you are the greatest intellect here? What is it that you have done? You have done nothing. Our role in the samsara is actually very, very mundane, yet we don't realize this. So builds our ego. So Uddalaka, by doing the sequence of creation, every time he'll go back and remind his son, so why are you ego me? Why have you got so much ego here? Because you got nothing that you have done here. It is these fellows, Lakshmi, Chaturmukha, Vayu, and Shiva, who have done so much, and they're bringing creation into being. Okay, so then he finishes this kanda. He finishes this kanda, and he closes this by saying, we don't have time to go into the details, but it's not a very important verse. He says, only thing I want to pick up here is, he says, etad dhasma vai tad vidvamsaha ahuhu purve mahashalaha mahashrotriyaha. That means her, sma, and why are, this is very unique verse. That's why I have put this in. Usually it will either be hi or vai or sma in verses. They indicate importance, exclamation, wonder, all those things. Yeah, but here all three are together. Etad ha sma vai tad vidvamsaha ahuhu purve mahashalaha mahashrotriyaha. So what Uddalaka says, you know what I have said so far, it is not my imagination. Yeah, this wondrous concept in the Sanatana Dharma of how creation comes into being, this ultimate secrets of creation understood by our ancient Vedic rishis, are not my imagination. Etad ha sma vai tad vidvamsaha ahuhu purve. That is, before me, those vidvamsas, those knowledgeable people who came, they have told this, is what Uddalaka says. This is not my view. It is a view of the rishis who have got their views from the Vedas. Okay. So essentially, those vidvamsas, he qualifies them as mahashalas and mahashrotriyas. Shrotriyas are the ones who have heard and knows, and mahashalahas are what they have known. They put that into action. So we should become mahashrotriyas and mahashalas. Just theoretical knowledge is not enough. We have to put it into action. So we should also become mahashalas. That's exactly the meaning of ritam and satyam. Ritam means yatartha jnana. Satyam means putting that yatartha jnana into action is satyam. Yeah, so we should, that's why if you took the Taittiriya Upanishad that Sudarshan once very nicely recited, Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Ritam Swadhyaya Pravachanecha, Satyam Cha Swadhyaya Pravachanecha. When the Rishi says this, it is for this. So he says those great rishis who not only knew but put things into action, it is their views. That is what Uddalaka says, the ultimate secrets of creation understood by ancient Vedic rishis, but not my imagination. What did they, how did they understand this? So he gives a summary in this verse, basically saying it is this Rohitam and Shuklam and Krishnam that brings this universe into creation, brings all the varied universe that we see is because of them. Now the red, as you know, signifies a Rajas. White, as you know, signifies Sattva. Darkness, as you know, signifies Tamas. The Abhimani Devatas for this, besides Shri Bhu Durga, it is Chaturmukha for Rajas, Vayu Prana for Sattva, and Shiva for Tamas. And these guys mix up and brings the universe together. So again, what I want to impress about to you is what the rishis are talking about is the three energy states that creates the entire world under the control of the supreme being. The three energy states are described in our Upanishads as Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas. They mix and they bring everything else into creation. So we are going to finish this off now. So far we have seen how the whole Brahmanda comes into being. So what Uddalaka has said in the 4th chapter is, by giving these 4 examples, Agni, Surya, Chandra, and Vidyut, red, white, and dark, Chaturmukha, Vayu, and Shiva, their consorts Saraswati, Bharati, and Parvati. He said these exalted devatas are responsible for bringing the Brahmanda. Okay. What about Pindanda? So the next Uddalaka says, now I will teach you how, when you look at your own body, your daily operations in your body, you can understand how these three deities are actually helping you run your daily affairs of your bodies. Forget about work, but your own bodily functions, how they operate, how these three deities under the control of the Supreme, they operate. Again, reminding Shvetaketu, when that is the case, why are you arrogant? Yeah, so that is what is the next talk about, talking about Pindanda and the influence of these deities. Okay, so I hope you found this interesting. It is a different angle to how to approach Chandogya Upanishad chapter 6, rather than just taking it as material fire, material water, and material earth, because that is an Adi Bhuta interpretation. What I have given you is Adi Deva and Adi Yajna interpretation. And if you go to Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has very categorically told us that you have to know the Adi Yajna interpretation and the Adi Deva interpretation for liberation. Just Adi Bhota, the Bhautika interpretation, superficial interpretation may not take you too far. Krishna has also told that very categorically. So I hope it made sense and it was interesting. So I'll stop there. Krishna Pranamastu, and we can take any questions. Open for discussion today. Any questions, anything you want to contribute?
Hey, Madhu, this is Harish. Just one thing, I know in Chandogya Upanishad, the Mahavakya on Tattvamasi comes up, right? Is that going to be the next chapter?
Absolutely. So I think it is so important, Harish, that we do the previous kandas. So I hope you're able to appreciate the spirit of Uddalaka and the Shvetaketu discussion as to how he progressively gives more and more knowledge with the primary aim of eradicating the ego in Shvetaketu by giving him ultimate truths. So now what will happen is next time when we meet up, we'll talk about the influence in Pindanda. Then at that point, Shvetaketu will say, I still don't understand that. I'm still not very clear. How can I still appreciate that I am a very dependent being? I don't understand. So at that point, he will go into the discussion philosophy of deep sleep. Yeah, and we have done that so many times. In Mandukya Upanishad, we have dealt with the deep sleep, this Sushupti Sthana. We have done that. So he will go to Sushupti Sthana and explain, see in Sushupti how dependent you are, you are just there. He'll talk about Sushupti. Then Uddalaka will say, I still don't understand it. If the God is very close to me and he is next to me, he is my Antaryamin, why can I not appreciate him? Why am I not able to see him? At that point, Uddalaka then goes to the 9 examples in sequence and explains that. So it's all in context. So I think that is why we have to start chapter 6 from the beginning, because if we just take that particular kanda and take Tattvamasi and talk about it, it just would not make sense. Yeah. So it's all in the same chapter. Yeah, absolutely, Harish.
Thanks. And one other question, is this Upanishad also the source of your Journey of the Soul sessions, or are there other?
Yeah, it's everywhere, Harish. Of course, Chandogya chapter 6 is so important. So there's every aspect of Sanatana Dharma is there in chapter 6. So you have to include that in the Journey of Souls. I've taken a lot of inspiration from chapter 6. And when we did Brahma Sutra, when we did the Tattu Samanvayat of how to, read the scriptures so that they are saying the same thing. And I took the 9 examples and then we did one session on it, I think. But certainly, I think we should revisit it. And of course, we have taken ideas from other Upanishads. But you're right, Chandogya 6 is so important. So there are lots of stuff that's come out of it. And the journey of souls also comes from Chandogya in general. So if you go to chapter 8, concepts of souls, Dahara Vidya, those things we have also taken up in Journey of Souls.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Manju.
No worries. Pragnesh.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that intuitive knowledge or intuitive learning. I know I'm talking about a very superficial aspect here, but I have interest in Ayurveda, and the history of Ayurveda says Brahma Smrutva Yasho Vedam. So it says that Brahma recollected. He was not taught, he was not, he didn't learn it from anybody, but he suddenly recollected. So it was an intuition of Brahma which then was passed on to Prajapati, and that's how Ayurveda, the ancient system of health in India, started. So that reminded me of that when you mentioned about intuitive learning or intuitive teaching. That's when I remembered that. So thank you very much for reconfirming my views.
Yeah. No problem, Pragnesh. That's very important because the Vedic, the whole of the Vedas is intuitional. It is not intellectual. It is full and full intuitional. That is why we say it is Apaurusha, because the rishis intuited it. They didn't compose it. Yeah, it just occurred to them. It's like how Isaac Newton is in the lawn sleeping and an apple falls, and he gets at that point an intuitional knowledge about gravitation. And most of the civilization changing research or new knowledge that has come through intuition. It's intuitional knowledge. Intellectual knowledge has a role to play, but intuitional is what that prompts paradigm shifts in civilization, is intuitional knowledge. And so Pragnesh, also on that ground, I just wanted to give an interesting analogy. So in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is an area where this intuition is compared to Vidyut, and the Vedas are compared to the sound. And then the rain is compared to all the verses that then come out. It's beautiful analogy. It says, like when you stand out and see, first you see the lightning, and then you see the sound, and then you see the rain. That is the sequence of the rishis have seen. First you have the intuitional knowledge, then you recite the Vedas, then you get the knowledge and it pours down through your mouth. So that thunder, the lightning, thunder and rain has been compared to intuitional knowledge, Vedas, and then reciting the Vedas in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So it's a very beautiful section.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thoroughly enjoyed.
Thanks. Right. Okay. So on that note, if we don't have any further questions, could I request Harish to take us through Om recitation, please? Thank you, everyone. So next week, we will continue with Chandogya Upanishad. I just want to finish the Pindanda aspect, and then following week, we'll do our Gita Chintane. So I think we are going through rotations, so it should come through next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Madhu, I just wanted to remember you're talking about some Bhagavad Gita books you were supposed to give us.
Yes, Manjunath ji, I've got all those books with me.
Right, okay.
I will post it. I'm slowly beginning to distribute that. I'll certainly send it across. Do you mind just sending me your address separately? Send me your address.
If you go to Sudarshan, we can collect it from him.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah, I
because
posted
he
to
is
Sudarshan.
the main man here.
Yeah, good idea. I'll post a few books. I think Sudarshan apparently is currently out of town. So at some point when he's back, I'll send him a 10 or 15 books, and then he can distribute it locally.
Yeah.
And I've also got all those books from Mohandas Prabhu. You remember he gave us some books?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all those books are also there in my study room. So I'll send it all together, or one day I'll drive to Sudarshan's house and drop it in.
Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you then. Cheers.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.